and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, welcome back to the show. Now, breaking news just before the other break. Guess what? Britain's gas storage levels are concerningly low. We have less than a week of demand in store. That's according to Centrica, the country's largest gas storage site. Amidst these plunging temperatures and, of course, high demand for gas-fired power stations, we've been churning up and getting through all of our stored gas. And now we've got less than a week left. What does that mean? Are we going to be facing blackouts? I don't know. I think we're going to have to get on the phone to Doha ASAP and say, can we have some of your liquefied natural gas to stick in our storage tanks, and expect Qatar to ride to the rescue. They did so last year, and looks to me like we are in trouble. Oh, the brilliant genius strategy of that idiotic nasally Ed Miliband playing his ukuleles in a field of windworms. Guess what? The wind hasn't been blowing. We don't have enough energy. We're having to dip into our gas storage, and now we've got less than a week left. I'd stock up on candles if I were you. Oh, blimey. What is this government doing? They're just walking us off the edge. It just couldn't get worse, could it? Our economy is absolutely in a mess. We're tanking. We're going over to make deals with communists who hate us. We're running out of gas. I mean, it's like a banana republic at this point. Could it get worse? Actually, don't answer that. I think the answer is yes, it could get a lot worse. Well, let's see. Let's see what Liam Halligan thinks, a brilliant economist, a very dear friend of mine, and one of the few people out there who doesn't just subscribe to lazy groupthink and goes on legacy media going, oh, yes, Liz must crash the economy, but says, no, hold on, that's not what's happened here. He's a man who understands far more than most people out there all put together, and I'm delighted to welcome him on the show now. Liam, thank you for joining me. I mean, let's start off with this breaking news, actually. Our gas storage levels, less than a week of demand in store. How's that going to add to the economic crisis we're facing?
Well, the UK has had gas storage issues for many, many years. Civil servants across a generation have argued to ministers that it's fine, we can just get the gas from Norway. The longest undersea gas pipeline in the world actually is from Norway to the eastern seaboard of the UK. We can just get gas through interconnectors. We can just get liquefied natural gas, as you say, from Qatar. Increasingly from the United States, we get liquefied natural gas. But we need to build more gas storage, and sort of NIMBYism and basic apathy means that we're not building gas storage. And guess what? When the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine, as you say, which often happens during the winter, when you need energy more than ever, what do? Well, our nukes are not nearly as good as they were. This is the country that invented civilly the form of EDF. We've been trying to get modular nuclear reactors, in which, you know, our very own Rolls-Royce, proud Derbyshire firm, has pioneered that technology. Will the British government go for it? No. Why not? Get on with it.
Get on with it. I heard that Japan are desperate to get those small modular reactors. Japan knows the thing about nuclear accidents.
Small modular nukes are very, very important, and yet we have the technology in one of our flagship companies, a world-class manufacturer that the whole world knows, and yet Whitehall has constantly put barriers in the way of those small modular reactors. I have no idea why. And what happens when, as I say, the wind isn't blowing and the sun isn't shining and we can't use wind power or solar power, is guess what? We fall back on gas-fired power stations.
I mean, less than a week to go.
Gas-fired power stations, which have to sit idle until the renewables don't work. And if you're only firing up a gas-fired power station every now and then, and you've got all the people there, guess what? The marginal cost of that gas is very, very high.
Right.
And guess what? The way our rigged energy market works is that the renewable companies, that's the price that they get when they put power into the grid. Right. It's a racket. Our energy market is a racket. Renewables, in my in my view, do have an important role to play. But we have to get beyond this mania of that they are entirely the future. We have to understand that in this country, there will be very big periods of the year when renewables don't work. We have to have proper backup in the form of baseload nuclear power, replenishing our nuclear fleet. Of course, we've got nuclear power stations coming on soon, but not nearly enough. In terms, I would say, of hydrogen also being a very important energy source, but we continue to rely far too heavily on gas interconnectors from the rest of the world. That is geopolitically extremely naive. Commercially, it's irresponsible, Alex. And this is what happens. We get into a situation where there is a cold snap, and of course this is a cold snap, but it's hardly unexpected.
But it's winter.
We get in a situation where the British government, our power grid, has to pay through the nose for energy, and the rest of the world is laughing at us.
Yeah, I wonder if we're going to have to face some sort of rationing. That'll be fun, won't it? It'll be like the good old days of the 70s.
We'll be cleaning our teeth by candlelight, Alex, but of course you're too young to remember the early 70s.
I am.
Unfortunately, am not.
I think the British spirit would probably kind of weirdly, sadistically enjoy it on a strange level. Right, let's talk about Rachel Reeves trotting off to China while the markets are in turmoil. First of all, let's talk about the markets and how bad things are out there.
Well, look, I don't want to spread alarm. I don't want to say that the British government is about to default on its debt. But what's very, very clear is that debt prices are reflecting the fact that the markets are increasingly significantly questioning the government's economic strategy. What am I talking about? What was all that gobbledygook about? Let me explain. Now, we hear on the evening news when the Bank of England cuts interest rates, and your borrowing costs are going to come down, say the correspondents. No, they're not. No, they're not. Because actual borrowing costs in the real world for governments and also for mortgage holders, if you want to get a personal loan or a car loan, if a company wants to raise money from a corporate loan to build a new factory or something, they are determined not by the Bank of England. They are determined by financial markets, lenders out there, big institutions, insurance companies, pension funds that have lots of cash, lots of people's savings. They put that into investments. They also put it into what we call sovereign debt. They lend it to governments around the world because they think governments will always pay the money back. They don't get a huge return for lending to a government because it should be, very low risk, particularly for, an advanced industrialized economy like the US, like the UK, like a lot of the continental European countries. But what's been happening over the last 6 months, Alex, and some of us have been banging our heads against the wall talking about this, talking about it to top politicians, talking about it to fellow journalists. No one has wanted to take any notice of what is actually happening. What is happening is that over the last 6 months, as the Bank of England have lowered interest rates from 5.25% last summer down 2 steps of 25 basis points of a quarter of a percentage point, where they are now 4.75%, we've seen the Bank of England lower interest rates at the same time. Rather than bringing market rates down, the markets have gone, no. We don't believe you. We're going to push rates up. We're going to put actual rates that count in the real world up. What the Bank of England is saying at this point is mood music. It is not impacting the real cost of borrowing. And that is very, very worrying. The real cost of borrowing, we can look at the 10-year gilt yield. What does that mean? How much it costs the British government to borrow for 10 years, right? Last summer, that was at 3.8%. It's now almost 5%, 4.8% as I look. It went up to 5% the other day. Massive increase, a massive increase while the Bank of England has been bringing rates down. And when the cost of government borrowing goes up, and this is not something that has only happened under Labour, but it's happened more under Labour since the budget of October the 31st, when the cost of government borrowing goes up, the public finances are pulled apart because the government then has to pay more to borrow to keep its spending programs going and its public services going, and to borrow, guess what, Alex, to pay the interest on the debt that it already has.
Yeah.
Rolling over the debt, as we call it. And the debt service bill each year, look, under the Tories, they were massive spendthrifts as well. Taxation was at a 70-year high when the Tories were booted, rightly, as I think, out of office. Taxation was at a 70-year high. Government debt was 100% of GDP, absolutely massive. But Labour, instead of consolidating the public finances, they borrowed a load more money and then gave a load of it to their mates in the public sector unions, gave a load of it to other Labour-supporting interest groups. And the markets, and Rachel Reeves justified that by saying, oh, don't worry, this borrowing we're doing, we're going to put it into projects that will lead to more growth. The economy will get bigger. We'll be able to handle the extra borrowing because a growing economy generates more tax revenue. A growing economy needs less benefit spending, fewer people out of work, less support needed for the economy. But guess what? Who would have thunk it? Big spending Labour policy programmes have not engendered growth. On the contrary, since that October budget, the growth outlook has been terrible. We've had successive monthly GDP numbers that are either flat or contracting. Some people, not entirely inaccurately in my view, are saying we may go into recession, which is when the economy actually gets smaller for over a 6-month period. And if an economy is growing slowly, flatlining, or goes into recession, guess what? It doesn't generate the tax it needs to generate. It needs a lot more spending to keep it going. Borrowing goes up.
Well,
the markets are now saying, we think the British economy is slowing in an alarming way. We think the public sector sums that Rachel Reeves is presenting are not credible. So we are going to charge the British government more to borrow whatever the Bank of England says, and there is nothing the British government can do about it. So if Rachel Reeves wants to get on a plane to China and get a photo taken with loads of dignitaries and shake loads of hands and acts as if nothing's happening, that's fine. But guess what? The markets are watching. And they're thinking, what she should be doing is holding an emergency summit in Downing Street, getting the ministers together, issuing statements saying, we get it, our spending's too high, we're going to rein it in, here are some proper pro-growth policies, deregulatory policies, supply-side policies to get the economy moving. She's doing none of those things. She's thumbing her nose at financial markets, and they're not going to like it. They're going to make her pay. That means they're going to make us pay, because when interest rates set by the Bank of England are going one way and interest rates are set by the market are going in the other way, the markets always win.
Oh, Liam, you really cheered me up. It's been wonderful catching.
I'd rather be gloomy, Alex, than wrong.
No, what I love about you is you give such brilliant, succinct analysis. I don't have an economic bone in my body, but when you talk, it all suddenly makes sense. It becomes crystal clear for a moment. We need you as Chancellor, Liam. One day in a future government, I hope you'll accept that role. Liam Halligan there, economist and journalist, and a man who actually gets it, unlike Rachel Reeves. Apparently she's going around asking everybody for their ideas on what they could do for economic growth. Oh, my goodness, you're the Chancellor. You spent the whole election campaign saying, I've got a plan, it's going to be great. And then as soon as you got into place, said, it's difficult decisions. And it's just, honest to God, these people, they are beyond useless. How did we end up with this calibre people running the country? Are there not smarter people out there? Are there not people with more integrity out there than that lot with all their nasal issues? I mean, seriously, how is that the best that we can do in Britain? Them. Beggars belief. Now, what they are very good at doing is conniving and covering up. That's right. And I've just heard a little bit of breaking news here, which has the sniff of diversionary tactics. The Home Affairs Committee will question Chair of the Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse, Professor Alexis Jay, on Tuesday, the 21st of January. The Independent Inquiry was launched in 2015 to examine how institutions such as local authorities, religious groups and child custodial facilities had failed in their duty of care to protect children from sexual abuse. The final report was published in October 2022 and made recommendations for wide-ranging reform. So the Home Affairs Committee are going to question her. Now, this is where I smell the diversionary tactic. The session will consider how far the recommendations of the reports have been implemented. It will focus on how institutions have responded to the findings and the relationship between the inquiry and government. Well, do you know what that sounds like to me? That sounds like the Labour Party going, what we're going to do is point the finger of blame at our predecessors. What we're going to do is have an independent inquiry into an independent inquiry to see how much the previous government listens to the findings of the independent inquiry, instead of having an inquiry into, oh, that's right, our hand in the matter. Now, call me a sceptic, but I think I can smell the spin on that pretty clearly. So there you are. There is some breaking news for you. The Home Affairs Committee will question Professor Alexis Jay, who did the inquiry in 2015 into grooming gangs and how institutions such as local authorities, religious groups and child custodial facilities failed in their duty of care to protect children from sexual abuse. OK, going to take a short break now, but when I come back, we're going to talk a little bit about things going on in the rest of the world, especially the good old Shamima Begum. You remember her. She could be free from Syrian prison within days as guards holding her, and thousands of other ISIS terrorists have come under attack. And all of them could be out and about again. We're going to be speaking to Mesa Gifford, former British volunteer fighter in Syria. Also going to ask him about what he thinks is going on with Trump, apparently possibly going over to meet Vladimir Putin to discuss Ukraine, because guess what? Mesa fought there too. All of that coming up after this.